Grace and peace, y'all. I hope everybody is feeling blessed today. All right, so I was channeling a little heavy, and I started to notice what I was getting was a lot of definitions of words that we use very frequently that we've attached certain connotations to or certain stereotypical grounds to. So things that you can be, but you don't fall in the category if you don't hit these, I want to say, ideologies. If this part isn't touched, that means you don't fall into this category. Let's get into this channel and see where this goes. Now, the first one that was coming to me, of course, was Christianity. We have an idea of what a Christian looks like, how a Christian practices. They go to church on Sundays. This Christian has to be somebody who devotes themselves to God, of course. They read the Bible. We have some things that we got on our checklist as to what a Christian is. Now, if you do not practice in a normal Christian fashion, people then start to question whether or not you belong to that group. So what I was getting was belonging to is one thing, but what we attach to belonging to is the emotional aspect of being bound to whatever restrictions the definition has. There we go. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for coming through with that one. So when it comes to being a Christian, if you aren't someone who goes to church every Sunday and you practice inside of a church, you are considered not really a Christian. If you are spiritual, but you follow Jesus, you are not considered a Christian to some. You can be one thing and be the other thing too, and still fall in the category. And this is what I feel was coming across deeply in my channeled message. We try to attach the emotional aspect of being bound to certain restrictions. And if it doesn't fit, you can't belong to the group. All right, I'm getting the idea of nonism, being a nun. The definition of being a nun is a woman of Christ. She's devoted herself to Christ. Now, when they talk about what makes a nun, you hear a vow of celibacy. You hear living in a covenant, so living in some sort of religious fashion. You hear a vow of poverty. Now, you can have two or more of those variations that come out of being a nun, mainly devoting yourself to Christ, a vow of celibacy, and living that life. But what if you don't live in a nonism? What if you don't live in an actual church? And what if you refuse to take a vow of poverty, which is technically not of God? Remember, Jesus came to abolish poverty because it's a low vibrational mentality. Poverty is not an actual thing. It is a mindset. If you had a mindset of poverty and you are a nun, that means you believe you don't have and that God doesn't provide. So you can't be a woman of Christ and not follow the word of Christ. Now, if you want to defer to that, you can hit Luke 4:18 when it comes to looking at poverty. Remember, Jesus came to give us good news, and it was good news to the poor. And even the poor shall be taken care of. You can hit Acts 4:34. The poor is supposed to be taken care of by those who are wealthy. So no one should actually be in poverty. Now, to jump back in as to what makes a nun, it is her devotion to the Lord. And it is that vow of celibacy. She is not saving herself for something specific or indefinite. She is saving herself for the one the Lord sends in to her. And she is not to tell herself to deny it. If the Lord says that is how it is to be, it is to be. That's following the Lord. When you take a restriction because you said this is of God, no, God is of God. So what God say go. So if God said, you're going to be celibate because ain't nobody here for you and you happy with that, that's different. But if you chose to turn down everything, you turn away blessings, and that is not of God. Now, to jump back in to understanding that you can belong to a group and not be bound to what it means to be in that group in order to fit the definition. You can belong to a family and not be bound to that family because certain dynamics don't work for you. Maybe you decided that the whole lifestyle of what happens in the family stays in the family, and there's a whole lot happening in that family. Maybe that don't work for you. Maybe the idea of family has become very corrupted. God's not going to order you to stay there. So you need to also understand that doesn't mean you don't believe in family. That means you don't believe in the dynamic of family that was being said to you. Hello. Now, that also comes with how God allows us to grow into ourselves. We all can belong to a specific group, to a specific family, and not fit the definition. Someone who believes in Jesus but doesn't call Jesus Jesus, maybe they call Jesus Yeshua. Maybe their idea of Jesus is the same connotation we have as a Christian, but because they were raised in India, it comes up as Buddha, but it's Jesus to them. Who are you to decide that doesn't fall in the category? Jesus came here for us to be universally accepting of all. He didn't come here to say, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. No, he said, you are all mine. And as long as you are accepting of everyone has a place. Notice his walk, which is exactly what we're supposed to be modeling our lives after. Jesus' walk, he did not run with people who were of his class. He did not run with those who fit the Christian stereotype. He was around the ones who were in need. Because as a Christian, your job is to help those who are in need. So it had nothing to do with who they worshiped and who they prayed to. It had everything to do with how their heart was designed and to help them find their way back. Because it is through those actions that you bring people to the Lord. You may find people who do not believe in Jesus and the Lord in anything spiritual, but because of the way that you treat them, because of the way that your heart is designed when you interact with that person, you make them a believer. And that is what we're here to do. We're not here to influence by making people think they need to believe what you believe. You are here to be the model, and that be what cultivates faith in those who are in need. Sometimes people lose their way of how much they did love Jesus at one point because they've been through so much. But one gesture of peace, happiness, harmony, and acceptance will allow that person to remember who they originally followed so that they can turn around and come back to him the way that they were supposed to originally. When we start looking at the world as to how we can make it better instead of how we can class, define, and force everyone to fit in a particular box in order to make it work for him, thank you, Jesus. Instead, we all start working for him. Life starts to change. Too many of us are here for self, and we think that we're following the Lord because we look to him. When you look to the Lord, you make sure that every aspect of you, every time you interact with somebody, you are highlighting who the Lord truly is. And that is the walk of Jesus. That is the walk of Christ. When you actually push that forward, when you make sure that you are the model of how Christ walked, you are doing what he came here to do. Because he came here to teach how to be like him so that you can make the world a better place. So, how are you allowing people to be who they are so that they can grow and come back to the Lord versus fearing him, running from him, and in a sense running from themselves because they know that they can't fit the way that you'd judge for them to fit, and instead they grow into themselves with the Lord? How can you be more like that? How can you be the open heart that someone needed to come in contact with so that they can find the divinity, the Christ, and the love within themselves to now bring someone else back to Christ? All right. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down. But I'm going to talk to you guys later. Love and light, y'all. And peace.